Hey, my name is Alex, I'm a music producer, and today I want to listen to the music of Chrono Trigger for the first time in my life, as requested by the people over at my Patreon page, where you can request me to analyze any single piece of video game music you like. Now, the only thing I know about Chrono Trigger is that there's a frog, it's about time travel, and Yasunori Mitsuda is the composer, the guy who also composed the music for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which is one of my favorite JRPGs. I freaking loved it. I love the music. I want to do a bit of a comparison, listening to Chrono Trigger first and then checking out another Xenoblade Chronicles 2 track to see the differences between the two. Let's go. This is Corridors of Time. Starts with this interesting arpeggio. Oh wow. I have to think about this in the paradigm of someone who's playing this in like the 90s. I'd probably think that if I heard this back in the day on SNES, hearing this sitar and stuff like this would be like, wow, this is different. This is very unique. This track pretty much has a very interesting vibe. Like you have this MIDI choir, which now sounds a bit old and vintage and stuff, but back in the day it was like state of the art, groundbreaking. Like this technical quality of the music in a video game was like, whoa! But now things have changed. Now we have real orchestras playing in video games and stuff like that, just like in films. Yeah, this is a pretty cool track. It's pretty solid. I've never played the game, so to me, I'm not like having intense emotional responses, but I dig it. Another track that was requested by the people at Patreon is Battle from Chrono Trigger. So let's listen to that as well. Oh. Wow. Damn, okay. That's one thing I love about like old JRPG music. They didn't really joke around with the bass. Those feels are so cool. Wow. Man, I'm vibing. If I imagine this with the eyes of someone who's playing this in the 90s, sitting at the SNES, this would make me so excited of starting battles. Every time a random battle would start, I'll be like, fuck yes, we're gonna groove, you know? And that would give me a lot of like energy and stuff like that. That bass groove carries the whole track. Then there's, Mitsuda's melodies on top of that with the choir stuff, which are very beautiful. But that bass line is really pretty much the protagonist. And you love to see it. Another battle theme that does this very well is from Final Fantasy X. I don't know if you remember the bass line, but it went something like this. That told you it's time to groove, just like this Chrono Trigger battle theme does. I love to hear this still in modern JRPG music sometimes. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 does that. Not necessarily like the intro with the bass riff, but the bass lines in the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 soundtrack are insane. So I guess this is where it all came from. Another thing about games of that time, like usually tracks were just 1 minute loop or something like that. They didn't used to be so incredibly long and developed or something. That was probably because of the size of the cartridges on which the games were stored. They didn't have so much space to have these insane symphonies. And then there's Final Fantasy VI with Maria and Draco, or Dancing Mad, which I'm like, I don't even know how they did that at the time. Even One Winged Angel was groundbreaking for the music of the time, because One Winged Angel featured not choir like this, like da da da, these samples, but it featured. When I listen to this type of music and I think of all the steps that have been done from this age to now, I'm like, wow, that's pretty mind-blowing. And for example, FF7 was probably the harbinger or the first game that actually had choir with recorded vocals that actually sang proper words. And that kind of opened the floodgates, because now pretty much every single game has lots of tracks with choir on it. But back in the day, I think the response that, for example, I had when I heard One Winged Angel in FF7 is the same response that people who were used to playing Pong had when they listened to the choir in Chrono Trigger. It's kind of weird thing that this at the time was like, whoa! There's choir coming out of SNES! And now it's like kind of vintage. Makes me wonder, is the music of FF7 Remake ever gonna sound vintage? Like in 30 years, when my kids are playing Final Fantasy 35, are they gonna be like, oh my god, FF7 Remake music sounds so retro? Another track that people wanted me to listen to is called Scala's theme. I don't know who Scala is. This one reminds me of Corridors of Time. Because even if like the melody is kind of different now, like in Corridors of Time, we have this like plucked arpeggio sound that goes from left to right, and it's kind of like a pendulum that swings. And maybe it's meant to represent like the time travel thing. I don't know. Probably. It's I think that's not casual. The Corridors of Time and Scala's theme both have this feature to it. Whoa! One thing that I'm noticing Mitsuda do a lot in the melody of this track is using slides and bendings. It may seem small embellishments, but I think that it makes the melody sound way more emotional. Like, take this as an example. That's fine, but if you play it with the slides and everything, those beautiful slides in between the notes create a deeper emotional response in the listener. This is what is happening in Mitsuda's melody right now. That's what I'm talking about. It does that a lot. I think at the time in the SNES era, using slides added a degree of realism to our soundtracks, which could not be reached in many other means. And so you may have lots of iconic themes from that era that actually uses them. And that's probably why it sounds so nostalgic. Maybe that combination of 16-bit sounds mixed with these melodic slides remind us of an era of gaming long gone. And those of us who grew up with it are probably gonna always have an emotional response to this quirky sound that comes out of it. This kind of sounds like, I don't know, I'm imagining like a rapper sampling this and, you know, rapping over it. You could totally probably make this more hip-hop if you wanted to, because the groove is there. Hey, this is Alex from the future. I was just checking if someone wrote a rap version of Scala's theme before making one myself, and turns out Wiz Khalifa, of all people, did it. Check out his song called Never Been. There's a beat there which uses Scala's theme as an instrumental. What are we talking about? But that's awesome. I love when music boundaries get broken like that and genres interweave, because music is music. And that's it. There shouldn't be any racism towards certain genres or whatever. Like, oh, rap music is stupid, metal music is this. Like, no, just freaking enjoy music for what it is. Although, you know, you can like a song and don't like it. But I don't think we should feel insulted just because Wiz Khalifa was like, oh, damn, that beat is cool, I'm gonna use it. That's called sampling. Rappers do it all the time, but wow. What an interesting discovery. And I really feel old when I listen to stuff like this, because we really came a long way. If we compare this with, for example, the tracks that Mitsuda did for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, like this is one of my favorite, for example, Kingdom of Uraya. Wow. Wow. I see he has still not lost his fascination for this, like, starting the track with arpeggios. But under that, he has these beautiful soaring strings that get more and more intense as we get lost in the fantasy, which is this beautiful soundtrack. And that's the added element of modern music. We have real orchestras that can do these dynamic changes, which are like the strings go for like whispering to like screaming and taking you into this world. And then the melody soars. Wow. There's again the bending. Wow. I think this is the tin whistle, maybe? Like, or anyway, this is like a woodwind instrument. Ba, ba. Those sorts of like changes add a lot to this freaking melody. Like, that's Mitsuda. He does that a lot. He does that in Chrono Trigger. He did that back in the day where it wasn't so easy maybe to do it. And now when you do it on real instruments, you really feel the weight of it. And it's like so fucking magical. There we go again. Man, this choir, wow. What the fuck? I heard this track so many times because I played Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and I listened to the soundtrack so many times, but I still get goosebumps nowadays when I listen to it because it's so insane. And what I love about this passage so much is that it makes you feel like you just ascended to the heavens and the angels are now singing to you. This is not only because of the melody, actually, but because of everything underneath it that creates this environment that is insane. I'm talking about the beautiful choir and strings that starts very soft, but then at the end they become super bold because you have a bass that takes over and a beautiful suspended chord that becomes a major chord in the end. This is what it sounds like without the melody. That just makes me feel like we just ascended to the heavens. And this is the perfect context because this is the lead up to one of the most beautiful parts of the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 soundtrack, which is this. We're at the edge and now we're flying down in the kingdom of Uraya with this beautiful melody that we know so well now, but played by instruments we're not familiar with. String section going crazy like that. Wow! It's so amazing. And then this woodwinds underneath create the atmosphere and the brass carrying it. Now it sounds important and epic. It's another part of the Kingdom of Uraya we're seeing with our eyes as we fly down. So fucking amazing. And now we go back where we started. The woodwinds. What the fuck? This is insane. This is fucking insane. Mamma mia. And now the brass again. Sounds freaking epic. And then at the end, the most beautiful element of this track, the bending on the woodwinds. That is freaking perfection. This is how to write a theme that makes you dream with your open eyes. Each different instrument is like singing that melody in a different way. It's as if you ask 4 people to sing in a chorus, one after the other. Each person is gonna sing the melody in a different way. Even if it's still the same melody, it's gonna add a lot of interest. It's like different perspectives. And this happens a lot of times. It's like, that's the foundation of orchestral music. Like in most orchestral music from films, games, and stuff like that, that you really love, very frequently you love it because you really internalize the melodies very well. And the reason for it is that they keep on repeating them forever, but they keep on changing the context by changing the instruments that are playing, especially changing the leading instrument. And this is something that, you know, they couldn't do in SNES because of the limitation of time. But now that we can write music with real orchestras, we don't have limits. Now we can really go to where film music always went and really use every single aspect of the orchestra of instruments we choose to use to tell the story. And this is crazy. Yasunori Mitsuda was probably already, able to do that back in the days, but he couldn't because of technical limitations. Now composers can do whatever. And actually, when you can do whatever in your music, it can be a bit limiting because you're like at an all-you-can-eat buffet. You're like, oh, I can eat this, so I don't know what to eat anymore. That's the same place where a composer finds himself. So being able to do this is actually harder. Composing on SNES, I think, was easier than it is than composing now. And Mitsuda does this so masterfully still, and that just tells me he's a freaking legend because this is one of the most beautiful music themes I've ever heard in my life. Still, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is my favorite, well beyond Chrono Trigger for what I heard, but both are great. Thank you to the Patreon people who requested this video, by the way, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.